Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Christ MotoGP podcast. We're here to review the test, which let's be honest, we're hoping for a bit more action. That was pretty much half day of testing. Pete was there, and yeah, it was a quieter test compared to the previous years that we've had. We still have rookies out on track, some new parts for majority of the manufacturers. Of course, Yamaha being the radically different one with their V4 on track. But yeah, Pete, just to give our listeners a bit of an insight. MotoGP test days, this is the real public one. And how would you describe them to someone who's, say, wants to go to one and be in the stands, or just how the days are? Because they're very different to a Grand Prix weekend, aren't they?
Yeah, they are. Yeah, I mean, they can be. Well, as we saw at Valencia, they can be long periods of inactivity where it's pretty boring and you feel sorry for the people that are there watching. And then there's other periods where there's this massive rush to just get everything done as soon as possible. And we sort of saw a bit of both, didn't we, on Tuesday because of the weather. Thunderstorms on Monday, the day before the test. So that sort of made the track damp, still wet. Sun was up on Tuesday, but cold temperatures, so it's slow to dry. So yeah, the track opens for testing, but nobody goes out because it's just not worth it in those conditions. So there's a few hours waiting around for the track to dry. And so, yeah, if you're a fan watching, it's pretty frustrating. It's not great for anyone else either. The riders obviously have got a lot of things they want to do. Teams have to keep revising their plans as well because they're seeing the time window get smaller and smaller. We did get a bit of a red flag, try and dry the track out. It was extended, wasn't it? The lunch break was cancelled. It was extended by 30 minutes, but it was still basically ended up with half a day, wasn't it? Really, just the afternoon of action. But once it did begin, it was just then non-stop, just going out, testing things, different runs, riders, well, certainly factory riders with different parts on their bikes, just going non-stop then. So it was good value for money if you were a fan in the afternoon, not so good in the morning. So I hope everybody did stick around and at least enjoy the afternoon. But yeah, it's I suppose in general for this test with the engine freeze already in place, that was the difference as well, wasn't it? Normally you would get a lot of engine work being done here because that's the big thing that needs to be prepared for the following season, and you've got a long lead time. For the European manufacturers, it's all frozen now, of course, so they didn't have that work to do, so that meant it was all sort of chassis aero for them. Honda is in the middle because they're moving up the concessions group, but they can still change the engine right up until sort of Thursday at the Thai Grand Prix. I did check this with Danny Aldridge. That's the case for them. So even though they will have a frozen engine spec for next season, and technically, as they say in MotoGP, the season starts the day after the end of the previous championship. So we're already in the 26th season. But for the engine spec for Honda, because they are changing, it won't be frozen until the Thai Grand Prix. So they can still keep doing that, and their engines come on leaps and bounds, isn't it, in the second half of the season? But they can keep developing that right through until the Thai Grand Prix, when it will be frozen like the European manufacturers. And you've got Yamaha, of course, they're staying on concession D, so they can test whatever they want engine wise right the way through the year. So yeah, I suppose that's really the only difference between the factories as far as a workload for the Tuesday test.
Yeah, and I think the theme of the day, Pete, you've probably seen it yourself, aero was the main. I mean, every team pretty much tried something brand new. I mean, we kind of got a glimpse of Honda's stuff from Alicia Spargaro throughout the weekend because it was essentially a 26 bike. But I suppose that we'll start with the big eye-catching one was really Aprilia, and they tried to disguise it with like the F1 style sort of bodywork, like the zebra sort of style stripes on it, but it's radically different compared to what they have had. I mean, when we looked at photos, you can compare it to a KTM, a Ducati with the air intakes and stuff. It seems more of a direction they want to go, and Bezzecchi was pretty quick on it as well.
Yeah, interesting, isn't it? Because the aero for Aprilia has been sort of where they've gone in a different direction in the past, and other factories were kind of looking at them, weren't they? So there's sort of having the edge in certain areas of the aerodynamics. So quite interesting that they now seem to have sort of moved back towards the centre, if you like, of MotoGP, as you say, with bits that looks a bit more similar to Ducati, KTM. Of course, Fabiano Stellacchini, whereas he worked previously, KTM and Ducati. So I guess we shouldn't be too shocked by that he's maybe put that influence on. But interesting that was the area where Aprilia were a step different to the others, and now maybe they're going a bit more nearer to sort of the group, if you like. Also, I suppose it's hard to get clear answers, isn't it, out of riders when they're testing parts, but Bez did say that he was pretty much as quick on both types of aero, and sort of pointed out, didn't he, that that's a good sign really, to be as quick as you are with the new aero on aero that you've done loads of kilometers, on already, shows that there should be a better window, if you like, of potential for the new stuff. So he was quite happy that he was pretty much the same speed on both. Very eye-catchy, as you say. It just made everyone instantly looks at what's this coming down pit lane with all the zebra stripes. So yeah, if it's designed to sort of be subtle, it doesn't really work, because everyone then wants to go and see what's on the bike. At the back of the bike as well, different rear wings, weren't there? I think there was sort of at least three different types on there.
I seen two that had that sort of, I don't know how I describe it, it's almost like a football net, like a goal. The way it looks, it goes like that.
The F1 sort of box one.
The F1 sort of, and then they had like, I described it as like a little halo sort of headband style one they had, and it's like
a half moon thing, wasn't it?
It was over the top of the seat.
Yeah.
I think with that,
and I think there were just the Stegosaurus was the other one.
That's right.
Yeah.
And then Martin kind of talked about how the adaptation, they didn't really want to fire parts at him, because, I mean, we kind of talked before, Pete. I mean, he's just so down on kilometers, and we worked out race mileages. He's like, I mean, you look at the stats, it's like 5,200 kilometers like away from his teammate. Like, we were trying to work out where he could travel to. I mean, you go to America that's how far it is from London to America. Boston, that's the distance he needs to kind of catch up. But he struggled, he said, with the feeling, trying to work out what's new, what's current, and that kind of sums up his sort of role in this test, doesn't it? It's more just getting him bike ready compared to Bezzecchi, who's refining things. Yeah,
it just shows how sort of far behind he still is, isn't it, really? It seems like when he's come back, he's tried to go with sort of the Bezzecchi settings. They're clearly working for Bezzecchi, aren't they? But it hasn't really it's not been the same for him. He's obviously got his own style, and I think he's been trying to adapt to the Bezzecchi style, if you like, and now they're trying to move things a bit more in his direction. He needs a lot of grip on the rear. It's important for his riding style, that kind of thing, and I think that's what they're looking at. But yeah, it just shows, like you say, he's so short of mileage, and he needs that bike to be more in his style. I think that they kind of draw a line around, okay, trying to just do what Bez does with that bike isn't working for Jorge. So yeah, he's gonna have to go in his own direction a little bit. But at the same time, you got Raul, Bez 1-2 on the test timesheet. So it's showing that the way they've got the bikes is working, or the speed is there, isn't it? So that's the dilemma they've got, is always that way, isn't it? Does the rider move to the bike? Does the bike move to the rider? And Aprilia can say, well, look, that bike in that spec with Raul and with Bez, both different types of aero, is quick. So, Jorge's going to have to, they're going to have to meet in the middle, aren't they? But it's finding that balance of bike setup parts and adapting it to what he needs. So, yeah, he's still playing catch up, basically, I think we can say, isn't it? And Sepang's going to be a big test for him, obviously. Just get through it without any drama. Any injuries will be the main thing. But he's got a lot of mileage to catch up on, as you point out.
He does, yeah, and that's a good point with Fernandez too, because he essentially said he had nothing to test. He just went out on a Sunday bike and essentially it was role reversed in terms of the times, obviously, or positions. Obviously, Bezzecchi winning the Grand Prix and Fernandez second. He was able to do the faster lap on the test, which doesn't really matter, but it's just, again, like you said, validates packages and what works. And I think for Martin, he can take real confidence from it. But it's trying to get to that step for him, I think, is the real barrier we're trying to say here, because that bike has so much potential. And no disrespect to Raul Fernandez, Jorge Martin's a better rider than him. And if Martin sees Fernandez there, surely he thinks, I could be fighting for Grand Prix wins next year if I just make that next step. But let's see what happens over the winter and into the first test at Sepang, because he just needs to, like you say, get through it without any issues or any crashes. Looking at KTM next, Pete, they were supposed they tested variants. I mean, their riders were running different things, every single one of them, because they all just try different parts of the suit, and it was more aero towards the rear, and it was kind of changed. I mean, Acosta had a new set of aero for everything, but he talked about changes, not being able to kind of race run them tomorrow if he had the chance. You need more data, essentially, and Bastianini talked about that too with the seat, and it just made it feel completely different. It's such a fine margin, is it, with the aero, with the current bikes, and how riders feel with them, because it's so delicate. If you change one thing, it can completely offset them, can't it?
That's it, yeah. And then you got, what might work at one track might not at another one, and everything else. So I think probably KTM, well, as much as any factory, it was about just going out, getting data on the new parts, change it again, go out, get more data, and they genuinely didn't seem to, it was going to be go back to the factory and we won't know what is the right combination. That seemed to be the thing, was that the riders thought that, we need to pick the combination of these parts, as you say, the different aero, different seat unit, everything else. They need to see from the data what was sort of the common points that were working for everyone, not working for everyone, and then put the mix together. And that's what they will do for Sepang, presumably. Interesting with Maverick Vinales, actually, because at the start of the day, damp track, Jack Miller goes out first, no surprise there, on the V4, and he does an installation lap, which again is normal for a brand new bike. Slow lap, straight back in. But then Maverick went out and did an installation lap on wet tyres, just to underline the fact that it was literally just to check that the bike was running properly. And he did that on both of his bikes. Now,
that's right.
Normally you would do that if you have something like a new engine or something, don't you? Because that's the purpose of an installation lap. So it was quite unusual to see that they were doing that sort of thing on Maverick's KTM. So whether there was something else under the bodywork that we weren't aware of, but there was certainly something that they wanted to do, literally a system check of just riding the bike around on wet tyres, even though the track was 90% dry, before they started testing, because the race direction were waiting for Maverick to come in. When he finished that, they then said, look, nobody else go out, we're going to red flag it, we're going to dry the track. So so there were certainly some major things being tested at KTM, apart from what we could see. And it sounded positive. I mean, sticking on Maverick, I mean, just to be able to do that number of laps with his shoulder, that was good, wasn't it?
Yeah.
So that was a good sign.
He was literally a 10th off a cost, and he was sixth
fast.
place.
Yeah,
that's a real promising thing. I mean that injury's been since July, hasn't it? So it's been a long road for him to get back.
A couple of false comebacks, isn't it?
Yeah,
trying to come back, withdrawing again. So yeah, that was promising in terms of speed and fitness for him in terms of the shoulders. So I think he tried some parts, didn't he, that the factory team had already sort of used, the chassis, swing arm. As well, so lots of combinations going on. Bastianini, of course, working with Andreas Madrid.
That's right.
Brad Binder working with Phil Marin for the first time, and seemed to be sort of happy with the progress that they'd made. So yeah, a lot of new stuff going on at KTM, and the big thing now is put it all together. And come up with a package for Sepang using all these parts, because as we say, for the engine freeze, I suppose we should say you've got Ducati that have frozen two different engine specs, haven't they? They've got the 25 spec and the GB24, but for Aprilia, for KTM, they've just got the one spec that they have for all of their bikes. So there's not even any choice at all there as far as the engine for them to even consider. They know their engine specs, so it really is just the aero. And you raise a good point when you say it was mainly about the aero. Quite unusual for teams to show aero this early, isn't it? Because they're always afraid that others will copy them. Normally it's a Sepang test, isn't it? Where they wait as late as they can, and then here's the new aero for this year, knowing that the new season's only a few weeks away. So I suppose this is highlighted by Aprilia trying to camouflage it. There's a lot of time for, if you did run new aero, which, as you say, a lot of teams did, for your rivals to get hold of the pictures and go over it during these winter months and think what was going on there.
Do you know what? I think it's the balance, because we've talked about it before, and the fact of getting new regulations come up. How much do you want to commit to, say, throughout the season? You're out one change of a package, but do you think this is why maybe teams are going, let's get it out early, and let's just, if we can just get it sorted, that don't have to worry about it because we've got the new regulations coming up next year after.
That's a good point. That could well be it. Maybe they're literally going to split the year into, we'll develop the 2026 bike up until, I don't know, May, whatever. Let's pick a figure. And then we just swing everything behind the 27 bike. A bit like Yamaha had to do with the V4, wasn't it? We did sort of see that development just switched mid-season, and there weren't really any new parts coming for the inline. I suppose we should just say on the 850 bikes, officially they can be ridden now, can't they? They can come out on track. There was an agreement between the manufacturers not to test them on track, so you could run the engine back on the dyno, but you couldn't do any track testing until I think it was November the 17th. So we're obviously past that date now, so really let's wait and see who wins the race to put an 850 on track. It'd be in a private test, of course, but that moment is well, obviously not far away, so we'll see who's first to do that.
I think it'll be KTM personally because I think they've already pushed at their engine. They've done that teaser video, and I think who knows, we maybe see something in a private test somewhere. I think KTM want to be first. They'll always like to be kind of the leader in that. Probably Ducati have got the bike sitting ready to go, knowing them because they've had such an advantage. But yeah, it's quite exciting because that switch you're talking about is going to be really good because then we get to the midpoint of next season, then it's going to be just everyone's not really going to care about the bikes that's on track. Just going to be like, what's the new ones look like? And it's going to be really exciting for everyone that's kind of into that sort of technical side. And just before we
I was just
go ahead, actually, you finish.
I was just going to just follow on for that. It'll be a dilemma though if you're the rider and you're fighting for the championship, isn't it? And your manufacturer, you're going to want your manufacturer to go all in on yeah. Whereas if you're the manufacturer, you're going to be thinking a bit more long term. So interesting to see how that sort of plays out. Yeah, I mean, if you're Ducati, or you'll obviously be hoping for this year where you get someone dominate the championship, wrap it up early. No brainer then, isn't it? That you switch over to the 850 sort of preparation. And of course, Pirelli tyres. I spoke to Pirelli over the weekend, and I think they're pretty much ready to support the factories wherever they want to go testing next year. So it's private tests or whatever. So they'll have the tyres ready for them to do that. So yeah, it's going to be a busy one.
Did you get a sense of the scale that they have to tackle in MotoGP? Did they kind of talk about that? Because it does help having, maybe they've built the foundation. This was always the plan with Moto2 and Moto3 in the past 2 years. Do you think that they're ready to kind of, not say blow Michelin out the water, but they're Pirelli. They're huge, really, in terms of motorsport and what they have for their different categories.
Yeah, I think they want to bring their approach that they've used in Superbike and in Moto2, this sort of mass production of race tyres, if that makes sense.
Yeah,
they want to follow that on and bring that into MotoGP. So they're keeping that kind of, they're trying not to go with sort of bespoke, handmade almost tyres, if that makes sense. They want to keep that sort of mass production angle, but obviously they still have to be prototype tyres and everything else that fit the bike. I think it seems to have been a promising first test that they had back at Misano, wasn't it? Sort of September-wise, and that's why because there were rumours that there would be another test after Valencia.
Yes, right.
And it seems like that because the first test went pretty well by all accounts, and all the teams and riders were sort of happy with the feedback, the way things were working. That's why there was no rush to do another test now. So I think it's literally that Pirelli are now waiting for the 850 bikes to be made. There wasn't any point really doing another test on 1000cc bikes and ride height devices. And even if you don't use them, it's, they want to now use the actual bikes. So it's kind of over to the manufacturers to say, okay, we're ready, let's go testing. Pirelli did say that they're under no pressure to reduce the lap times or, make the lap times slower, quicker, should we say. So, that's not been something that Storm has put on them or anything else. Obviously, the bikes are going to slow down anyway. So a lot to be decided. I asked about the tyre pressure rules and all this kind of thing. Could that change as far as having decisions made, post-race? They're obviously aware that it's not an ideal situation, but they did emphasise that you have to have some rule in place, that stops teams going too low. So, we'll see exactly what happens there. Again, they also said they need to gather data. They need to see how their tyres will react as far as how much the pressure changes on these 850 bikes with the new aero, no rider. And when they get into a pack, it's one thing in testing when usually riders are out on their own, they might follow one bike, but it's not a race situation, is it? Where you've got loads of bikes around you, which is when we see the tyre pressure problem sort of at its worst. So, there's a lot of sort of data gathering for them to come. But they seem happy with where they are at the moment.
I always do think that when there's a new tyre, especially for this, with getting new bikes too, you always do wonder if next year, I know this is really off, but Moto E did in testing, like sort of practice races, just to understand how the bikes and stuff were working. You'd maybe like to see that with testers, like test riders, just kind of say, right, we're going to do a race simulation where we all kind of follow each other. That would be really useful for Pirelli, I think, especially with the tire pressure stuff, wouldn't it? Do you understand? Just ahead of what's coming, just to be like, well, we kind of know how everything reacts now with the new bikes, the front tires. It's just when you're in a pack, what does it work like? I think something like that would potentially, I don't know what the manufacturers would make of it, but it would be something really useful, actually.
Yeah, I think you would. I think the manufacturers would want to know as well, wouldn't they? How does our bike react on these tyres in a group? I suppose if you're someone, well, actually, there's only really a few test teams. If they're private tests, which is what it looks like, no one's got a lot of bikes they can put out, is there? So you would need some sort of cooperation. I do remember when they did those the night tests in Qatar,
Right.
for the
Qatar,
first time
yeah.
with the rain, wasn't it? Because there was this debate about, well, originally, wasn't it? If it rained in Qatar, there was no racing, and then they decided, you know what,
Soak
it
the
might be
track
all right.
and then
Yeah, let's
yeah,
try
yeah.
it. So they soaked the track and sent them out there to ride around it, as you're saying there, Jordan, in a group to try and simulate being in a race situation and with the spray and what was the visibility like. So we have seen them kind of cooperate in this way before, and yeah, it would make absolute sense, I think, to do that at some stage.
Yeah, interesting. Interesting with Pirelli because it's going to be. I mean, it's not even a year now. They've done their first test and everything by this time next year, so it's going to be proper. Yeah, the switch is always quite good, I think, for fans. The Bridgestone to Michelin was always quite interesting how that sort of panned out in 2015 into 16. So yeah, I am hoping for kind of something similar. Just to stay on Maverick, by the way, I just want to talk about this. Jorge Lorenzo and him are seemingly, well, it sounds like they're in talks with a partnership in terms of a rider coach sort of analysis role. Not at every race, but Maverick emphasised on the broadcast, Pete, that he thinks the work that's needs to be done at home, and the homework is perfect for Jorge to do. So obviously that means that Lorenzo, I don't think is going to go to every round, but
Right.
no matter what, if Lorenzo's at home watching and he spots something, Maverick has someone there. That's a potent partnership potentially. I mean, having Jorge Lorenzo as a rider analyst coach is just like, I mean, that's a level above everyone else, really, isn't it?
It is, isn't it? Yeah, good guy to have in your corner on riding technique. I mean, one of the most smooth, classical, hit the same spot every time riders that was out there. And yeah, people might think, well, what can you watch at home or something like that? But even, was it, I think Pedrosa and Acosta, wasn't it? Pedrosa was texting Acosta, was it Portimao?
Right. Yep.
And saying that he'd seen on things on TV and Acosta was able to use that to help him. So these great riders can do that. They can spot things just from watching the TV, even if they're not at the track. And as you say, presumably Jorge will be at the track as well. And I mean, in fairness to Maverick, he's had a good year apart from the injury, hasn't he? He was looking strong on that bike. So it's not like he's backed into a corner and is looking for a solution. He did adapt well to the bike, and he was just really unlucky with the timing of his injury. So, but interesting that he still thinks he can find something from himself rather than from the KTM, isn't it? So. Yeah, let's see. I mean, Maverick looks, as we were saying, he looks strong, look fast. So hopefully next year in this sort of new era for the Tech Trois team as well, that he can come out and show what really the kind of podiums he deserved to have had this year, certainly Qatar, obviously.
Yeah. Interesting. Let's see when it's actually confirmed, because I mean, Lorenzo just wasn't given the name about who he was in talks with, and then it went to Maverick, and he was like, "Yeah, me and Jorge are in talks." So it was quite sort of like, "All right, that's who it is." So that would be really interesting if it works out, because I don't know if it's going to. I mean, I was kind of thinking, what can Maverick really learn? He's in like his 10th year of MotoGP, and but seemingly there is something there that Maverick feels like there's a level above. So yeah, let's keep eyes on that over the winter if there's any sort of formal or official announcements. Looking at Ducati, Pete, there was nothing really that kind of stood out. That obviously you look at the main thing was Alex Marquez and Fermin Aldeguer trying out newer parts, newer bikes. Obviously, Alex Marquez is now a factory Ducati rider essentially, and he seemingly went really well. Aldeguer too, they seemed to jump on that 25 spec, and it just looked like he was all season. No real trouble.
Yeah, they both adapted quickly. Yeah, the big question mark was what were they actually? What was new? Obviously, we saw the aero on Alex's bike, didn't we? He got to try the new Ducati aero. That was the obvious change because it was nice and all black, so easy for us all to see. But otherwise, the bikes, didn't look too different. As we say, the engines. Okay, there was the 24 to the 25, but it's hard. I think Pecco Bagnaia said that the changes are sort of under the skin, or you can't see them. So yeah, that sort of says it all. So we don't really know exactly what was different. All we know is, as you've quite rightly said there, Jordan, is that both Gresini riders looked fast and comfortable on whatever they were testing. So a good start for them. But Valencia, it's a very unique track, isn't it? We're saying that the weather conditions and things like that. I suppose with the overnight rain, the low grip, it could have been a situation where it could be challenging, to find grip in those in those kind of. It was sort of dusty. It was almost like Qatar when it rains and you get that sort of film of dust everywhere. It was like that on Tuesday at Valencia. So to go well in those slippery conditions is normally a good sign, mechanical grip at least. And yeah, we've just got to see now, how does it translate over to Sepang and everything else. But certainly a good start to Alex's factory career, we could say. And also, as you say, Fermin Aldeguer, of course, it's only Fermin and Frankie Morbidelli who will be on the year-old bikes, isn't it? So, he's maybe, I don't know, maybe he's got a bit of a point to prove, maybe a bit fired up to show that, okay, I might be not on the latest bike, but I can still be up there, and yeah, good start for him.
And then just look at the factory team. I mean, Pecco's debrief kind of summarised this, where if you looked at just the plain timesheets, Nicolo Bullick is faster than him. Obviously, the caveat being Bagnaia was out on I think he was going to do his fast run, then he crashed at turn 2. You've seen his bikes in pit lane. They had the stickers on them, that was scrutineering stickers that were just bike 1 and 2. So there was no new bike rolled out essentially for him. It was just refining parts, as you say, underneath, or just aero really for the factory team.
Yeah, that's how it looked. The other thing we don't know in testing is we don't know exactly what tyres people are using. We don't get the information about what compounds they're using. Is it a new tyre or not? That kind of thing.
Yes, right.
So that's always a little bit frustrating not to be able to see that in the way that we do on a Grand Prix weekend, where you can see how many laps someone's done on a tyre. Are they using an old tyre, a new tyre? You don't get to know that at a test, unfortunately. So yeah, you can only really go on what you see and what are the best lap times and what's sort of the average pace that people are doing throughout the day. But Bulliger, at the factory team seemed to enjoy just not having the pressure. He'd only he got half a day at Jerez before he started stepping in, and that was it, damp track again. So he got the chance to ride, and he's finishing his sort of first chapter on a MotoGP bike pretty well, really, isn't he? Obviously, he goes back to World Superbike, but he's doing the testing with the Pirellis for Ducati and the 850 bike, so he will be back. And as we were saying before, really Toprak, like Bulliger and Toprak, they've really at this test they've done well, haven't they, for the World Superbike guys? Even though it's moving to Michelin at the moment, so in the future when it's over to the Pirellis, it should be even better for the World Superbike guys. So I think they've it wasn't an easy time for Bulliger. He seemed a little bit like he'd hit a wall almost, wasn't it? Where he made big steps initially, and then he kind of said that he wasn't really feeling comfortable on the bike and everything else. But I think he did sort of finish this sort of first stint on a high, as we say, by sort of finding something. I think he said he felt the best he'd been on the bike, didn't he, at the test? So a good finish for him. With Pecco, nightmare into the season again, isn't it? Crashing out and everything else. And just it's the consistency, isn't it? Which is something I suppose also Fabio Di Giannantonio struggled with this year, of almost day to day. Pecco, I think he said he felt great, didn't he, on the Sunday with the bike before the crash, was happy with the bike at the test, but earlier in the weekend it had been it hadn't been working for him again. So they've got to find that consistency, haven't they, somewhere? But a lot more riders on the similar package now, so they'll have more data, but also Pecco's going to have more competition, isn't he, from the satellite riders, in theory, because the spec of all the Ducatis is now going to be a lot closer for next year.
Yeah, I thought it was quite interesting what Alex Marquez said. I mean, it was just like he didn't really want to know what Bagnaia's issues were when he initially got on the bike, and he didn't really want to have that influence in him, which I thought was quite sort of not cheeky, but it was like, Alex Marquez kind of worked it out himself, and I think he looked okay for day one on whatever bike he was riding. It was as close to what Bagnaia probably had anyway, so that kind of gives you an indicator that, Alex is seemingly, I'm not saying he's found a window on it, but his initial first feeling is pretty positive.
And that's a good mentally, I would say, isn't it, for a rider? Because you'd be curious, wouldn't you, if you were going to get on a bike? You'd be like, well, so what is it that they don't like about it? You'd sort of want to get an idea, wouldn't you? But at the same time, you can understand why he would say that he doesn't, because he doesn't want to then cloud his feedback of that bike. He wants to look at it completely fresh. But you'd be tempted, wouldn't you, to say, so what is it that what is it that Digio and Pecco, what is it that they don't like, or where should I be careful, or this sort of thing? But I mean, no accidents, I don't think, for for
No,
Alex, Aldeguer had a great big save, didn't he, on his
it was
bike?
unbelievable. It was so good. It was a proper save. I mean, Frankie Carciati's reaction to his team pretty much said it. It was the last corner, and it was, as you said, the dirt that kicked up in the dust. I mean, he was so offline going in, and he saved it for about, it felt like about 5 seconds, and he picked it up. It was just magic from him. So, yeah, I think he's found the limits already. Aldeguer, obviously, it's only one, not even one day. You can't even say it's a half day, really, but first impressions do count, and I don't think we kind of factored in that Alex kind of lives with the guy who's mastered the 25, and you can imagine that Mark's told him, okay, initially this is what it might feel like, but then if Alex doesn't want to hear what Pecco's had to say, do you think he wants to listen to the guy who's kind of on top of it? So that'll be interesting over the winter, how much them do have to discuss things.
It will, yeah, it will. As you say, yeah, it's a tricky one, isn't it? How much you get influenced by other people's feelings, and how much do you just stick with what you need, isn't it? And I'm sure, yeah, Alex, he comes across as someone who knows what he needs to concentrate on, isn't it? And when he needs to listen to other people and when not, and just do his own thing, keep calm, as he says. It's a phrase that we've heard a lot this year, isn't it? And just work through methodically of what he needs from the bike. And yeah, someone at the other end was Vietti, wasn't it? Making his sort of MotoGP debut, if we stick with Ducati. He was really thrown in the deep end, jumping on Morbidelli's bike. Morbidelli injured, of course, wasn't he, after that grid incident on Sunday. So Vietti got to sort of get on the VR46 bike, and yeah, I think he said it was the best day of his life. He was all
Best
smiles
day of his
afterwards.
life, yeah.
He seemed to really enjoy it, and yeah, so a great chat. It's always good to see new riders get the chance to ride a MotoGP bike.
Absolutely. And speaking of new riders, we'll look at Honda, and I mean, we've seen their 26 with Elisa Spargaro, and it was more about Marini and Mir just getting on, kind of validating, and they seemed fairly happy. They were just kind of talking about, yeah, it's new, it feels slightly different, but it's all about the test. But the new guy, obviously Diogo Moreira, the Moto2 world champion, I mean, he got on and he was, I think, 1.8. Well, he was off the fastest time. So that's still impressive in terms of a rookie. And his comments to Lucio Cecchinello were really funny. You should go and read them if you haven't, about his first feeling. It involved, he essentially shit himself going around on the the first few laps on that Honda, which is always going to happen. They always feel like the sensations are so heightened compared to a Moto2 bike. But for a Moto2 rider, especially a champion coming in, Pete, he looked really sort of made for MotoGP, his style and everything.
Yeah, impressive debut, I thought. This obviously Toprak had done a private test before, hadn't he? And a few years ago he'd ridden before, so he had a bit more of an idea of what to expect. But yeah, Diogo's jumping straight from Moto2 to MotoGP, and yeah, no big mistakes. It was, as you say, 1.8 off the top. That's perfectly respectable time. Plenty of laps, lots of experience. No Idemitsu on the bike either, was there? So I think that shows that that partnership is ending now with Chantra leaving and no Asian rider in the team. So we'll see who's on the other side, whether they'll have Castrol on both bikes or whether a new sponsor comes in. Don't know yet, but yeah, that was why he had the sort of the HRC livery, but he was on the 25 bike, wasn't he? I think.
It was purely 25. Yeah,
right.
So it was probably one of Zarco's bikes that ended the season potentially. I could see that because, like, why would you give him the new parts straight away when you just want him comfortable? But no, he was really. I mean, when you see the photos of his style, he's got that modern style that fits every sort of bike, if that makes sense, where they all hang off, and he looked really just happy every time he came in and took a helmet off. It cut to him, he was just smiling. I mean, that's the best thing for a rookie. I think we'll see really potential, like the potential's really high for him. He's coming in with a lot of pressure, but I mean, someone said the stat to me, I couldn't believe it, he's only been in the Grand Prix paddock since 2022, which is just the rapid rise, Pete. I mean, there's certain riders that do have that rise, but you wouldn't really have thought of Moreira how much he's actually came on.
He hasn't he? Yeah, leaps and bounds through the smaller classes. So as you say, he seems like he's so relaxed all the time. I mean, I saw him before he rode the bike, and he was quite happy to. He was standing by the bike for the photographers. Obviously, they want to get some pictures. He was happy to do that. You know, he certainly didn't look like a bag of nerves or anything like that. He was sort of taking it all in his stride and just adapted to the bike, with all the pressure there of everyone looking and everything else. Of course, with Honda losing these concession status, he won't get the extra private tests next year that he would have had otherwise. So I suppose he's really the main loser in the concession move, really, isn't he? But as he's shown, he's shown he can adapt, and it's just getting that well, where was he to the other Hondas? They were 29 sort of eights, weren't they? I mean, he's not even that far from the other Hondas, which is really what you should compare him to, more than sort of Raul at the top. But so it's a good start for him, and let's see. Maybe he and Toprak will have quite a battle next year.
It's a good rookie of the year battle, that actually. You're getting two world champions going at it with each other, which is quite rare. I think it's going to be a really interesting battle there. I think it's maybe that South American style you say, Pete. He's so relaxed. I mean, he's just a chilled out sort of guy. I think hearing what people were talking about him, obviously, if you don't know, he's so good on a supermoto. I mean, he turned up and done like a wild card last year, and he won of like the supermoto, like I think a European round. He just turned up and won, and like he was beating guys who do it all season, and then he turns up to Valentino Rossi's France last year at the flat track, and he smokes everyone there and wins that. And you're like, the guy just has so much natural talent with motorcycles. So yeah, I think he's a proper talent, and Honda have nabbed themselves a real diamond there, and he's only going to get better as the years progress. And then we look at the other rookie, and we can kind of factor in Yamaha to this. Pete Toprak, he was 18th. He was 1.2 off the fastest time overall, but interestingly faster than Rins and Miller. Obviously, we don't know what Rins and Miller were trying out, if they were just doing long runs, but I mean, if you break it down in simple terms, he's the second fastest Yamaha on his debut, which that's something, isn't it? And he didn't look like he was even getting bothered with front end feeling. Maybe those test days that he's had have just settled the nerves, and he's came in and he's just done what he needed to do. I think he done 53 laps too. So, I mean, Moreira did 57, but that just shows that Toprak's fairly comfortable already.
Yeah, he looks like he's adapting well, doesn't he? And that's the big thing. I think it's obviously a massive step from Superbike to MotoGP, and also from his Superbike riding style to a MotoGP style. But he's shown he can do that. A lot of people and sort of just looking on, but also even I think Junior Borsoi, team principal, saying, Toprak's braking is unbelievable. So he's been able to carry that braking skill across without the stop rack, if you like. That's sort of, he's had to put that to one side because it doesn't suit the Michelin tires and the MotoGP bike, but he's still strong on the brakes, and he's worked out how to adapt his style. And I suppose that there were already good signs in the way that he'd adapted from the Yamaha to the BMW so quickly in World Superbike, that he can do that. He can switch his style up, and I suppose it was a continuation of that. He certainly I mean, he looked like a MotoGP rider already, didn't he? From the footage, he looked like he understood what he needed to do on the bike. And the bike itself, let's face it, is very much a prototype, a rough prototype at the moment, that V4. Toprak only rode the V4, I think, didn't he? He didn't. Most of the other Yamaha riders had one of each, and I think the other guys did at least one run first on the inline and then went over to the V4. But I think Toprak was just V4 all day, and there's it really is the first version of the V4. There's going to be a lot of changes for the Sepang test and everything like that. So that in itself is part of the time gap, obviously. You're quite right about the tyres. I think he did try, several new soft tyres, which obviously helps. Rins said he didn't use any tyres. I think his fastest that was on lap 4 or something, which adds up for that. So that's obviously part of it, but that's almost details at this stage, isn't it? If you're someone coming new into the class, like Toprak, like Moreira, you just want to know that you can understand the bike, get the feeling for the bike, not be falling off it all the time, or having that loss of confidence that can be a disaster for a rookie. And the team were all smiles. We didn't get to hear, unfortunately, what Toprak thinks, do we? Because he's still unable to speak publicly because of his existing contract with BMW. So unfortunately, until I suppose January the 1st, anyway, we won't get to hear Toprak himself speak. But Yeah, saw him in the garage, and he certainly, you get the impression he's somebody who's taking on board the opinions of everybody. He's listening to everybody. He had, at one stage, there was Dovi there was Nieto, there
Yeah.
was his crew chief, Chirabola, all stood around him. He's sort of discussing with all of them, lots of hand movements about corners and things like that. So, he's just taking everything on board and trying to learn. And yeah, I think it was a really strong test for him. First time, obviously, up against, let's say, the full lineup, barring the guys that are injured.
Absolutely, and I think it's a real. We talked about it before, and you touched on how good of a win that is for World Superbike. Seeing Toprak and Buliga really just comes across and adapt pretty seamlessly. I think they're only going to get better. Obviously, Buliga potentially we'll see him in 27 MotoGP, but Toprak has that year now where he can prep for 27. But I think he'll surprise next year in terms of his ambition. Or maybe just sort of you want results because he's a world champion at the end of the day, and regardless, you have to just set realistic targets. But I think Toprak naturally he looks normal on MotoGP machinery. I was kind of skeptical, thinking is he going to look odd on the bike, but no, he really gels with how he looks on the V4 especially, and his style in breaking the turn one was just incredible. When you were seeing the comparison shots with the head-on shot, he was just sliding it in, and it was just gliding lovely, and it was like unlike Toprak, but it kind of was Toprak still in terms of his World Superbike style. But I'm excited to see what he can do on a bigger track. For example, Sepang I think it'll be a real learning curve, because I'm trying to think how many times he's actually been to Sepang. I think maybe once or twice potentially when World Superbike were there. So it's just, in terms of, you get what I mean by this, it's bigger, it's so much more space on the track, and I think that'll test him coming up next, but a good starting point for him. And then lastly, we can look at the V4 really. Quartararo, Pete, there's a theme throughout this debrief that it's too early for me to give my feedback, it's too early, and I'm like, he's kind of not delaying the inevitable. The questions are obviously, when's your mind going to be made up? But what did you think of his first day? Jack Miller was really complimentary of his. He said he did a scorching lap essentially on the V4 from day one.
Yeah, given that the bike hasn't really changed, has it, that much over these since we've seen Augusto Fernandez doing the wildcards? They had a new chassis, didn't they, at Valencia, but the engine-wise, the power output, we know is down and low. And Valencia, there's no big long straight, as you quite rightly say. Sepang will be where that will show up. We'll see, how strong is the engine performance. It's a much more rounded track, isn't it? You've got the long straights for the engine performance, some fast corners, some slow corners. So that will be the real test for the V4. But I think, considering the bike isn't, all aspects of this should change for next year. Even the aero is really, I didn't notice it so much at first, but it really is just sort of fitted onto the V4, isn't it? It's
100%, yeah.
It's just the inline one, and it's, they've sort of filled in the gaps because it's a narrower bike, but otherwise it's just the M1 aero and everything else. So there's so many areas they can improve, and so to be half a second off, okay, let's assume it was a soft tyre time attack, but even so, and obviously Fabio's is sort of his speciality, but even so, it shows the speed is there even at this early stage, and there's obviously a massive window to improve this bike in all aspects. So I think it was, more positive than people were expecting. Not just Quartararo, but generally all of the Yamaha riders to be 1.8, as you say, within about that region. What was it? Miller 1.4. Yeah, they were there. So they were all within sort of a second and a half of Raul. As I say, bearing in mind, Rins says, I didn't even try new soft tyres either. They then had another day of testing, didn't they? The day after on the Wednesday as well. So for them, it was, they had other parts that they hadn't had time to try, and they were in no rush to try, unlike the other teams, because they were staying on. So we can assume that they probably found a few more tenths of a second the next day, everything else. So I think it was, after it's been some sort of fairly bruising wildcards, haven't there, at times, where Augusto Fernandez has said, we're hitting the same problems and we need new parts, everything else. That's still the case, but the bike itself, it's not too far off given how young it is, isn't it? And we've now got to see, like you say, Quartararo's made clear, look, I don't have time to wait. It's all well saying that the bike needs this or that, but I need to win now. And So it's all going to be about Sepang and what comes there. We know there's going to be an engine. Obviously, that's the big thing. There'll be an engine upgrade, presumably full power, available for the Sepang test. And so then we will get to see it with aero made for the bike, with a chassis that is within the window that they need. Jack Miller and Rins are explaining about, you've got to set up all the electronics, haven't you? All the traction control, the throttle connection, all these other things. So once all that gets dialed in, then we'll know what is the bike's potential for the 26 season, which is going to be so important for the rider contracts, isn't it? And Quattraro is saying that I might make a decision sooner rather than later. So it's going to have to be, well, the Sepang test is going to be massive, isn't it? Because that's going to be the big moment. Yes, they can develop the engine as the season goes on, but what will the starting point be? That's what we all want to know, isn't it? And I think actually for the Valencia test, it's not too far away. If they can, now take all of this data, including from the 3 wildcards, and really, hit all of the points that they need to hit. Augusto Fernandez saying about the front end is really quite sort of strange. He's not really happy. He fell an awful lot of times, didn't he, for somebody who didn't do many.
Do you know what? I actually have got to point this out. He had 10 crises for the season, and I'm like, how many did he have on the V4? I think he had at least 7. In those wild cards, because he did do the standing ride, didn't he, for Oliveira at the start of the year?
That's right.
He might have fell once or twice there, but a majority of those have been on the V4, haven't they?
Yeah, that's it. And I think Jack Miller also backed that up and said, yeah, I can feel that. Augusto was saying of the weekend, he was interested to hear what the race riders would say. Would they have the same feelings on the V4? But and I think Jack Miller did say that, yeah, there is something there that they need to work on. So again, that's something that they can find time with. Alex Rins didn't seem too bothered with the front, actually. For him, he wanted traction. He wanted more grip on the rear. So,
yeah,
different riders, different things. It's always the way. But yeah, I think it's, cautiously optimistic. I think what might be the phrase going into this winter, knowing that there's now several months and that they can work on all aspects of this bike. But yeah, it's going to be really interesting to see what they come out with at Sepang and what sort of steps they can make. If they can make that step forward, it's not guaranteed, is it? Sometimes you bring a load of new parts and you almost have to start again. It's interesting with Honda, wasn't it, that they were saying we're at the stage now where it's a new bike, but it's almost just an evolution, isn't it? It's not. Yeah, in previous years, a new bike at the Valencia Test has been a completely new bike in a completely different direction, because they were almost jumping around trying to find what they needed. Now they kind of know this is the direction we need, so it's just chipping away at areas a little bit. Jaime would say it's almost a different feeling from his time at Honda to, it's a new bike, but there's no big surprise with it, because the bike is already good enough. The V4 Yamaha, there could be a surprise when they make big changes. So we've got to see, how it all fits together when they get to Sepang.
Yeah, and that's how many months away? 2 and a bit. Jeez, it'll come around really fast, and I can't wait to see what the first few days are like and how different it looks. Because, I pretty, like you say, that the Ferrum was pretty much just the M1 stuff from Fabio. From any way you see the photos, it's like, well, geez, it's not really that much different. Maybe they will change it and go more sort of Ducati, Aprilia-esque in terms of what they want, but a lot of box ticking for them to do in terms of just, I think Colorado mentioned it about, you just can't find a base set up in like 10 laps. So you need to go out and you need to be like, okay, this done that, I don't like this, and then you have to then just go back, and the feedback, I don't think people really understand how crucial the feedback is. And at a time like this, you have the comments are listening to everything. Those engineers, if they hear a certain word, they're like, what's that mean? And then that's where the communication problem comes in, doesn't it, Pete? Because if some rider's saying this does this a certain way, and he said he's done this a certain way, you get this complete, just tangled up mess of development, don't you?
Yeah, it's a good point. Yeah, I remember one crew chief saying about how it's about knowing your rider, isn't it? And every rider is different. And how when his rider would go out on track, let's say FP1, dirty track, the bike's not set up because they haven't been on that track from the previous year. The rider would come in shouting and raving about, I'm losing the front everywhere. It feels terrible. And the crew chief knew, because he knew his rider. He said, I say nothing for 30 seconds. The rider sort of vents all this sort of, wide-eyed fear of what the bike has been doing on this dirty track with the wrong setup and the wrong throttle maps and everything, everything else. And then he said, then he calms down and then we start work. And he said it's just like that every Grand Prix weekend because he knows how his rider is and he knows to just sort of discard the initial, sort of, oh, it feels terrible. I'm losing the front because he knows it. And then it's okay. Well, actually, okay, yeah, let's do another run and then we'll decide. It's the crew chief job is one of the most interesting, I think, in the paddock as far as combining that technical side, academic side in a lot of cases, with the human side and the almost the psychology, and it's all mixed together, isn't it? Management almost, they've got to run the team of mechanics as well. It's a really interesting position, and the feedback is key, as you say. Yeah.
And there's no manual to hide the crew chief. Every one of them is different.
Exactly.
And I think they're the closest thing, I think, to a football manager. Honestly, in terms of their styles and how they all work, because every manager is different in football, but they're the closest one to the player, essentially the rider, and they have to then listen and go, well, you do this, but it's such a fascinating road. I don't think people really give them credit enough for how actually of a difficult job it is, and to be the top end. You always think about Burgess and you think about Santi Hernandez, for example. Obviously he's had a lot of success with Marquez, and he's getting there with Joan Mir. I think just trying to manage personality is half the job, essentially. And if you get an easy going rider, it kind of makes it easier. Then it's harder sometimes to extract everything from them. But if you get a hot-headed rider, you have to pick your moment with them, which is just, it's so crucial in a moment like this for Yamaha, especially when you can bring that into it. That Quadraro's had the same crew chief for 6 years now, really, hasn't he? So
time, yeah.
That'll be a good thing with their relationship, how they're able to adapt to a new machine. And compared to, say, Toprak and Girabiola, who are brand new, that's another added element into it, isn't it?
It is, yeah. You reminded me when you mentioned Santi Hernandez. I interviewed Joan Mir on the Thursday, and I said, before the race, we see Santi sort of talking in your ear on the grid, looking super intense. I said, you always look quite relaxed. He's like, yeah, I'm quite relaxed, but Santi, And I
he's
said,
so intense.
What's he saying to you? What's he going through? And he said, normally it's just, last minute tire changes. He's just telling him what the other riders are doing, what's happened on the grid, that kind of thing. Yeah. I'm just curious as to know. I said, well, what's he telling you when, on the grid at that last moment? I said, yeah, but yeah, he did. Mir said, yeah, I'm normally quite relaxed, but yeah, Santi's pretty at that moment in time. He's fully focused, shall we say?
Yeah, there's been documentaries about Mark kind of taking the piss out of Santi for how on the edge he is, and you almost think Santi's actually the rider. The way he gets on, he's like, he's so meticulous in how everything has to be, and yeah, I love that. There's so many different characters in MotoGP, especially with the crew chiefs, because I mean, I do feel sorry for, say, this year, Christian Cabrini, because he sat there and he's very patient from what I look at the videos Ducati share. Pecco comes in and he'll go, the bike's done this, the bike's done that, and Cabrini sits and he just nods. And then, as you said, that 30-second thing, he waits and then he takes his notes because he hears Pecco with the helmet off and he goes, okay, this is what he's trying to say. So, yeah, I love that. I love speaking to them. They're probably some of the best people to speak to, crew chiefs, because they actually give you a lot. I believe you spoke to Paul Trevathan too, so people can read that over the winter, which will be quite fun. That, of course, is Pedro Acosta's crew chief, but we'll leave that there for this. This is our test and review. I hope you enjoy it, and yeah, we'll be next episode. It'll probably be a review of each rider's season. We'll give them a grade and kind of look where we graded them in, when was that, July, and maybe see if someone drops up or drops down and someone goes up. I imagine there'll be a few changes there, but yeah, see you next time, guys. Hope you enjoyed, and don't forget to hit the like and subscribe button if you're watching on YouTube.